Welcome, everybody, to the Investors Podcast 2.0 Wealth Mindset, where we dive into the minds of the successful real estate entrepreneur to uncover the tips and tricks that have allowed them to keep moving forward. I am your host, Scott Bauer, and I'm excited that you're here with us. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Invest This Podcast. I am your host, Scott Bauer. You know what? This is number 103. Pretty exciting. We're past over 100 episodes, and today I got Steve Richard with us. I have Indianapolis. Steve, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing really, really well. Crazy time that we're living in right now, but, thriving and surviving, that's for sure. That is for sure. Why don't you give the listeners a little bit kind of more about your background? Obviously, you said that you're in Indianapolis, Indiana. Tell them what your investing strategy is and kind of what you're focused on now.
Yeah, sure. So I appreciate you having me. I always enjoy doing these, and it's fun. I know the biggest problem I always have on these is like trying to not run too long. So just smack me through the screen here if I'm talking too much. But yeah, Scott. So I got into business in 2004, and I've done a little bit of everything since then. I used to run a pretty decent sized turnkey operation where we bought the houses, fixed them up, sold them to other investors, and we managed them. Did several hundred of those. And really cut my teeth hard in the business at that point in time. I started out just buying bank-owned properties and flipping them, and learned a lot about the resale process and project management at that point in time. Obviously, when we got into turnkey, it was pretty heavy with property management and just client relations. We've owned a brokerage. We've had a construction company, so we've kind of done a little bit of everything. So we're from 2004 to 2014, was the first iteration of my business. And since then, I've really gotten focused hard in the last 6 years on wholesaling. So we do some renovations, some flips. Very particular about that. We do a little bit of everything, but really 85% of our business is wholesaling.
So, I kind of want to back up there because the mindset you have to go through to jump through several different hoops, so to speak, in the real estate space can be overwhelming, right? The shiny object syndrome is very common in real estate and real estate investment because, after all, you can make money in several different ways. But for you, it sounded like you started off, in the turnkey operation, which for the listeners out there, tell them what that means.
Yeah, so I'll take it even step back further. So we got into the business just flipping houses like most people. So for the listeners here, a lot of people think I'm going to call friends that are realtors. They'll find me a house on a bank-owned property on the MLS. I'll hire a general contractor to fix it up, and then I'll hire a realtor to sell it for me, and I hope to profit in the end. It's a really common way people get into business.
Yep.
I had already been bit by the entrepreneurial bug. I worked at tech consulting firms prior. I got out of college in the late 90s, and so it was the dot-com days, so it was a little crazy, but it was like the wild west of dot-coms and the Y2K issues and all. And so I saw a bunch of paper entrepreneurs that just like they had no ideas, but they're written on the back of a napkin or a piece of paper, and they're getting millions of dollars of venture capital. And I was like, man, I'm in the wrong business. I saw a lot of those people fail though. But anyway, I was probably in a different place because of that and a business degree that I was ready to do something. Real estate presented itself. So I never grew up thinking I was going to flip houses or be in real estate. I don't think anybody does.
Right.
But I quickly latched on to this after I had started a tech company. That's a whole nother podcast. And it was really interesting. But when I moved on from that, man, I got to do something. I got a bunch of free time now. I'd had this side hustle. We were building this cool tech company. Still had my day job, but I started doing real estate. I'm like, you know what? I now see how to make money here. So as soon as I saw like, this is not guesswork. House plus renovation minus commissions and holding expense, looking in comparison to what the house is worth, I can easily see a model here where if I manage it correctly, I can make money. So let's do that.
Yep.
So 6 months, I quit. I was pretty high ranking executive in the corporate world. Quit that, flipping houses. So to get to your question, at that point in time, the market started to slow down in about 2 years later. We saw it slow down in 2006, the beginning of it. And retail sales got a little different. So we switched to selling to people that had damaged credit. So out of necessity, I couldn't sell as easily to the open market, and the sales were starting to slow down. Plus, the houses sat empty when you fix them up with a contractor and put them on the market with a realtor. They're just sitting there. You're paying the utilities, you're paying the taxes, you're paying the insurance, right? and you had to spend a bunch of money to bling them out to make them super perfect for a buyer. So we switched our model to slightly cheaper houses, and we actually put a tenant in place. And in 07 and 08, 06 going to 07 and before 08 happened, back then it was very common practice that if your tenant rented from you for 12 months on time, they could just refinance the house into their name, basically. Very different times, as you know. That doesn't happen anymore. So if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. And we switched that model, but it wasn't like we came up with a new model. We just couldn't sell as easy, so we pivoted. And we still wanted to sell houses, but I switched the house a little bit to make more sense to the new client because I found a client that was easier to sell to. And so that market really dried up because subprime lending stopped. And so these rent-to-own kind of houses didn't work anymore. So they became rentals. The rent-to-own turned into rent-to-rent. And then we're in the rental game, but now we have nicer houses that could resell. We have what we thought were paydays when they resold. They didn't cash flow very well because the rents weren't very high compared to the price we had into it. Mm-hmm. We didn't buy them to have a good balance. We bought them to have an equity spread on the back, right? So we pivoted again and we thought, well, if we're just going to hold these rent-to-owns that no one's really cashing out on, we should buy way cheaper houses where the rents come down 20%, but the house is 40% cheaper.
Yeah.
So we buy two houses for the same price of one, and the rent is 2/3 of what the other rent was. So now I'm literally getting almost twice the rent at half the right. And so the ratio started to balance. So again, it wasn't like we went back to the drawing board and came up with a new plan. It was like we pivoted to a different buyer. That buyer fell through, so we pivoted to a different house. And that all of a sudden we found ourselves in 09 owning 40, 50 rentals personally. And we were making cash flow. And then investors started coming around saying, how are you doing that? Like, houses are cheap. We want to get in, but I don't want to mess with it. And so I'm like, oh, now I can sell to these guys. So I'm like, here's a house I would do. Go buy that. You can buy it for 50 grand. I know I can buy it at 40. I'll make $10,000 and I'll just give you a house. And then they're like, well, I don't want to buy it because I don't know what you know. And I don't know anyone that can fix it up for me. So then we thought, well, pivot again. I'll fix them up for you and make them rent ready. And then you can buy them. And then they're like, well, then it became like I couldn't run a very good sales organization, which is what I learned years down the road was my main problem at the time. But then it became like, all right, well, we're fixing these up and people want to buy them. But now they're telling us, hey, man, if you would just put a tenant in place, dude, I'll pay you more for it. And I'm like, oh, let's do that. So we're literally 5-6 years into the business now, and we pivot. We're all of a sudden, now I own a management company. We're managing hundreds of properties. We're a client service company because I'm just dealing with all these clients we have. We have a construction company because at any given time we're working on 20 renovations at a time. And I'm not even talking to anybody about real estate investments anymore. I mean, I am, but I'm not even doing that anymore. Now I'm trying to run a construction company, a management company. And so it was never these big mind shifts of changing our business model. It was literally like corrections. We were taking the hands that were being dealt to us and just doing the best we can. So that's really how, and then that turned into the next 5 years. Kent Clothier is a friend and mentor to both of us. Their company, REI Nation, which was better known as Memphis Invest, but I had that. They were a big turnkey operator. I had torn out of the Inc. 500 magazine. I had it on the wall outside my office with a big circle. I'm like, dude, I'm going to beat them. So now I look back on it and I'm like, thank God I didn't stick with that. But it was crazy because we kept, and I think this is a huge point. This is where my heart and passion is, my purpose in life. So I kind of want to go there, and I want to give it back to you here because I don't want to hijack your podcast. Too bad. But we kept pivoting with what the market was giving us, and that seemed like the right thing to do. But every pivot was like selling my soul a 10th or 100th at a time. And at some point, I followed opportunity down to this road that I didn't even want to be there. And then I'm stubbornly growing that business. And at some point we were managing 350 homes. I'm doing 20 construction projects. I've got 30 employees. I've got 4 companies. I am not an integrator. I'm trying to run all of them with no integrator to be seen. A brokerage, big REIT clients now in 12, 13, 14, when the REITs are buying, we're heavy with them. And I just looked up and I realized like I just ran like my dreams into the ground, and I run a business that everybody else wants, and it's not what I wanted. And it's not because I'm selfish. It's because now I can't give people what my purpose is. I'm not, people want to come to me for creativity and strategy, but what I'm doing is talking to them about the management and construction. And that's a hard business to make money at. And so it's a long-winded answer to your question about how all that happened. But like the path of us led because we were just chasing opportunity, because I didn't really know where I wanted to go.
You know,
I just let myself get pulled.
That long-winded answer to that is great though, because that's exactly what I really wanted to hear. Because what you did there, I mean, your mindset had to change. You know, you learned a lot about yourself throughout that whole process, right? And so I think that the listeners out there that maybe are following the same path or a similar path to what you were going down at that point in time can relate to that, right? Like you for one, I think it's good for people to see that you stuck with it, right? You started making all these pivot points, and it led you to one thing, and then you just kept going after it. And what it ended up leading you to is finding out that wasn't what you wanted to do. And sometimes you have to do that, right? Because now you know what you don't want to do. You know that that's not the path you want to go down, and that allows you to free up your mindset so you can focus on what it is that you do want. And I think there's so many people out there today that get it stuck in that trap, right? You start chasing something that you think you want, and once you get there, it's not what you want at all.
Absolutely.
You know, and so you went through all of that. This led you to 2013, 2014, and then you realize that, okay, all this noise and all of this headache that you had, because what you just talked about, I got a headache from just hearing you say that, to be honest.
I did too. I'm sweating.
Because all that, it's so, I mean, I have my general contractor runs all of the rehab stuff. I mean, I'm not doing any rehab stuff at all. It's all him. I hand it off to him. I say, you do it. You come to me when it's done. You know, I'll approve things when you need them approved, but I'm not involved in that. I mean, yeah. So, and the whole purpose for that is because that's not where I shine, right? But that led you to where did that lead you to? I guess keep going with the story.
So yeah, in two things happened, three things happened, I guess, convergently, like around 2013, going into 2014. I went to I used to use a software called Infusionsoft, and it's a marketing and sales software, and they used to have a big conference every year. I don't know, maybe they still do.
They do.
They had Simon Sinek come speak at that, and a lot of your listeners will probably know who that is. He has a book called Starts With Why.
Love him and love that book.
Cool guy, right? We got to meet him. He was the speaker. He signed a book and stuff. So it was cool. I started understanding the golden circle, I think he calls it. And it's like, instead of like, we're a real estate company, we flip houses and we're a real estate company and you should buy from us. That's how most people market themselves, right? Like, we change people's lives. We do that through real estate. It just so happens that we sell houses. Like, it's this different process. So the other thing, I met a gal there, super, super cool girl. Her and her mom owned like, I think 20 or 30 Keller Williams brokerages around the country. They literally didn't work 1 minute ever, an entire year. They did not work in those businesses. They had operation managers at each one of those offices around the country that just reported to the financials and then came to them for strategy. And they just sat above as almost like a board of directors. And she said, I'm 40 and I'm bored. I'm going to become a consultant for businesses because I've realized I'm really good at this. And here's the model I'm going to follow. Here's this book called Traction. It's written by this Gino Wickman guy that nobody knows who he is. This is like in 2013. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And anyway, I read that book and I'm like, oh, this is a manual to running a business, not a theoretical book. So I sat down with all the managers in our businesses and I said, we're going to do this. It's not a mistake because it led me to where I am, but I tried to do it myself without hiring an EOS consultant, which is hard. But we sat down, and the very first chapter, if your listeners haven't read this book, the very first chapter is like, what are your core values? Forget what you do. Who are you and what do you care about? How do you show up in the marketplace, right? so we kept working through these iterations of core values, and my managers would come up with all the stuff that they liked and they thought our clients would like. And I'm like, dude, I hate all of that stuff, you guys. Here's mine. Let me lay out what I care about. And they just looked at me like, dude, this is dumb. Like, it's cool, but like, this is all about personal development and being a good person and providing value. And like, we see how we could translate it, but that's not what people want to hear. They want to hear that we're making communities better and we're helping investors reach their dreams and whatever. And anyway, it was just funny because there was this massive disconnect. And I'm like, well, the only way around this I see is one day I was frustrated and I was with my core 2 or 3 leaders. And I was like, listen, the only way these two things my stuff and your stuff comes together is if we quit doing property management and construction, which are 2 core components of the entire model we've built with hundreds of investors all over the world. And it was almost like me making this comment, like, idiotically, we're never going to do that. And I'm like, we'd have to stop all this. And everybody just sat there looking at each other. And I'm like, maybe we should. Like, oh, and I'm like, oh. So that was the beginning of it. That was the beginning of the end of that business. And shutting that down was really hard. Man, people suing me suing them, firing people that I loved and cared about. Man, it was messy. Guys that had power of attorney in my company sold houses that I owned without telling me and took the money. Guys took leads, took clients, sold them houses. Like, we had deals we were going to close. And I'm like, oh, one day I had my right-hand guy who I trusted deeply. I got a call from a title company and they're like, man, I know you guys got a lot of stuff going on. I wanted to tell you that deal you called me about last week that you're doing with this client. Your guy so-and-so called me and he's coming tomorrow to close on that with this other client behind my back. And like, it was unbelievable. I made a lot of mistakes and I'm not blaming anyone else, but it was literally the traction piece changed my whole thinking. At the same time, I'll take a step back. We had a huge REIT client that we helped them buy over 100 houses that year. And I had a loose business partnership with a fraternity brother that wasn't papered up. We didn't have the right contracts. Mm-hmm. It was all based on trust. He was going through what is most likely alcoholism, separating from his wife, living in a hotel, like, not telling me any of that. I wasn't asking. We weren't having regular owners meetings. I didn't know, like, this is collapsing over here. And this REIT client demanded so much of us. And so I was getting pushed really, really hard and I can't figure out why this partnership and this huge client, why this isn't working. I'm getting stressed. At the same time, I see this REIT that bought 20,000 homes in 9 states in 4 years. I see how they operate and I'm like, damn, if this is how world-class organizations operate, this EOS book is telling me how they operate. I'm looking back at my business and I'm like, we're screwed. Like, this isn't me. We suck. And if I'm going to stick this out, which I don't want to, I got to fire everybody and I got to rehire everyone. So at the same time, I was going through some things with my kids where one of them had ADD and I was they were getting psychological testing. So I went and did it with them. I got a full panel of psychological testing on myself. And they're like, yeah, dude, you're stressed. I'm like, no, I'm not. And they're like, you don't even know it. And so I started going to counseling then, which is counseling and therapy, which a lot of people have a negative stigma with. And I love it. All my kids go. And the reality is it's not just for when you're depressed or you really need it then. But that's crisis management. Where it really, really helps you is when you're in a good place and you can work on being better. And so I started doing that. So this trifecta of like, I got to be a better dude. I see how world-class organizations run, and I realize I'm not doing what I'm in a bad place. That's when I made that shift of like, we're shutting it all down. And so my thing is this, like during the downturn, in 08, we were growing leaps and bounds. And so like right now, you and I have been talking a lot about what's going on with coronavirus. Honestly, like we're all in this together. This is nothing. It's an even playing field because everything is shifting for all of us at the same time.
Yep.
The things that rock people's businesses is cancer, divorce, car accidents, right? Like depression. That's why businesses fail. Like, or people that aren't entrepreneurial or they are very entrepreneurial, they don't find an integrator partner. So they just run it into the ground because they get bored with it and they don't know how to run it, right? Like Corona is not why businesses fail. So it was interesting to me. I was awakened to all of that at that point in time. And I also realized that, damn, you actually have to decide what you want first and then build your business to give that to you, not build a business and hope that you can suck out of what's left over. It's a good lifestyle, right? So
that goes with the thought of like, you run your life doesn't run you, right? You got to decide and do. Michael Burnoff, I don't know if you know who Michael Burnoff is.
Yeah.
So Michael's big on that, right? Decide and do. Decide, make a decision and go do it. Don't wait. Don't sit around letting the world bring it to, just having it appear. I mean, you have to make these decisions. And what I like about what you just talked about is that, I would ask, well, how did you have to change your mindset to get through that? But you kind of answered it, right? Like you went full circle all the way. You decided that it wasn't what you wanted to do. You found traction. You figured out that, you were looking at these organizations that were what you wanted to be, and that's what you decided that you wanted to do. And so you decided, and then you did it, right? And you had to go through the growing pains to get there. So that would have been going to the counseling. It just so happened that your kids were going there at the same time. And I would actually make a point on that. Going to a counselor or mental health, anybody with mental health is just like going to the gym or going to the chiropractor, right? If you just go
absolutely
when you're overweight, that's a problem. The problem's already there, right? Or I'm a big chiropractor guy, and so I go 3 times a week. And why do I do that? Does my back hurt? No, it doesn't. But you know what? That's going to prolong my life, right? And I work out every day. Why? Because I'm fat? No, because I want to be healthy, right? So you go to a counselor like that for the same reason, so that when you're in a good state of mind, they can help you to be better, right? I love that. I love that you said that. And I think the listeners will as well. And the coronavirus thing, I guess we could go there on, we talked about that prior to the call, so I might as well go in there now. I'm not so, I don't know. I don't know exactly. Nobody knows really what the effect of this is going to be, but it's happening to all of us, and it started really, really quick. Everything happened and unfolded within a matter of weeks. I mean, very quick, right?
Yeah.
So for the listeners out there, because this is on everybody's mind, so we might as well just talk about it. Let's go there. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think this real effect is? I mean, what are your thoughts on coronavirus?
So this will be easy for me because I legitimately think it's definitely a health concern. I legitimately think we should be taking measures to mitigate virus. I don't know what you want to call it, like disseminating throughout, right? I think we weren't prepared as a country and it's literally has nothing to do with Trump versus anybody. I mean, this is just something we haven't had to go through. And the next time this happens, because it's probably happened not just in 1918 with the Spanish flu or whatever. This is probably, it happened with MERS and SARS and the pig flu and N1H1, and this kind of thing happens. I see the good in it. I see distance learning at colleges is going to change forever. I see that corporate travel expenses are going to be slashed. I see that new industries and new titans are going to be born out of this. I think we'll snap way over to like everyone's got to deal with working from home in the new way. And instead of just snapping back to normal in 3 to 6 months, I think it's going to not quite go all the way back. I think this will change where we are, right? Like we'll do business differently. In fact, I was joking with someone I was on a call earlier, and I was joking because everybody is selling virtual wholesaling right now.
Yeah.
Right. But like there's 25 courses on virtual wholesaling this last week. And so what's funny is I predicted that if we want to make a bunch of money, Scott, you can get in on this with if you want. In about 6 to 12 months, we're going to release a product and we're going to be like, we have the new secret to buying houses. Nobody's doing this. Show up on the appointment. Here's the new secret. You actually drive to the house and shake the seller's hand and show up at the appointment because nobody's doing it because everybody's going to be buying over the phone. And I do think that's a great way to be able to do things, but I think that I think you lose business by not being able to be face-to-face, right? But here's my summary of this. It's obviously causing a great economic impact. It doesn't matter if it's appropriate or not because it already happened. I think it's a waste of time to talk about should the media have overreacted, should they have not of. I guess if we're talking about it because we don't choose, it doesn't matter because we can't, unless we're going to run for Senate or Congress and try to affect change that way. Us talking about why it happened is probably irrelevant compared to like how do you deal with a thing like this.
Yep.
I think the world's going to learn. I think we're going to be better at disease management. I think we're going to be better at distance learning. I think corporate travel is going to be questioned. I think Zoom, I wish I would have bought Zoom stock in December. I've literally been on Zoom every day. Later, after we do this, Scott, I'm doing a cocktail hour on Zoom with 3 of my buddies. 2 of them live here in town. We're just going to literally, I don't have a cocktail here in the office. I'm going to have my water, but we're just going to jump on the phone and BS a little bit on Zoom. My kids are using Zoom. I've been doing Zooms for all of our, the RIA that we run and the meetups. We've been doing all that. You and I have been on the same Zooms with our mentors and coaches and masterminds right now. But yeah, I think that stuff's going to change. I think it's going to be good. I think right now it's really tough if you weren't ready for this. I think a lot of people are going to be exposed for having a little bit of cash reserves. But there's an election year. The market cycle is where it is. I mean, there's so many other dynamics going on that if this happened again in 6 years from now, it'd be totally different because we've already seen it. The market cycle would be in a different place. It wouldn't be an election year, right? Like you can't recreate this. So my thing is let's learn from how to deal with disruption. And then the final thing I'll say about this is I think you'll probably agree with me. Literally other than not spreading the disease, every other thing that I've talked about over the last 2 weeks with anybody about what's a good idea to be doing right now is a good idea to be doing anyway. It's just good stuff. And we've gotten loose because we've been in a high margin economy for a long period of time and we got loose. And other than social distancing to not get a virus, I mean, every other thing we've been talking about right now is what people should be doing. Like I said, it's just a really good idea. So that's my big take on it.
Yeah. Everything you just said is absolutely correct and true. The fundamentals of standard business practice is what we've been talking about, right? Cutting your expenses, watching your P&L, not overzealous spending, making sure that you're, looking at the marketing that's going on, making sure it's actually producing something. Make sure that, you don't have employees that aren't producing anything or aren't doing their job and you just have them around because you got extra cash. You're not actually forcing them to do things, right? I mean, that is great business practice. And so if you think about this from a holistic standpoint, maybe this is just sharpening everybody's sword. Right? This is making sure everybody's doing what they need to be doing in business, and the people that aren't are going to be exposed, like you said, and get out of the business. I mean, there's been here in the Phoenix market, there's been such an influx of rookie investors that have come in that it's tainted the people that really know what they're doing, and that's a problem, and it's actually, I was having a conversation with another investor of mine who over the last 6 months has been trouble finding good deals because the good deals that do come along are gone right away, or they're bid up to prices that don't make sense anymore, but somebody's buying them because they took a course and think that they can just go in and flip houses. Right. And so this is going to get those people out of the market. It's going to get the amateurs out of the market. It's going to get the people, the wannabes out of the market. And it's gonna get back to business as usual. I definitely see that. So not a lot to touch on, I guess, other than it's just part of it. And if you don't have, I guess I feel bad for people that are just totally broke right now, people that lost their job and don't have any reserve. But this teaches you that, hey, maybe you should put some money away. Maybe that every dollar that you get, you don't go spend. This is a learning opportunity for people, right?
I think from a business perspective too, Scott, is one thing that we're doing right now is we've taken our expenses. This is a practical thing that maybe will help people. Something that we would normally spend monthly, maybe we've divided that down to weekly or biweekly, or we've taken the opportunity to call a vendor and say, hey, can we pay you ahead a little bit on stuff we know we're going to do, but we'll put more cash in your pocket, which we don't love giving our cash away right now, but give us a discount in return because we know we're going to do it anyway. So kind of win-win scenarios, right? So there's that. Plus, okay, instead of just dropping marketing every 4 to 6 or 8 weeks, let's plan every other week and cut those down so that by having my vendors contact me every other week to hit my card to put more mail on it or buy more names or whatever we're doing for marketing our business, I've shortened my decision-making cycle so that we're just watching things more quickly. That will go back to more normal, but this is one of those things that probably won't expand all the way back, because all of us who have a business should be looking or trying to build wealth, which means we're either actively pursuing investments or we're actively trying to build a business, or both. Probably should be living in these 90-day bubbles of like, what am I projecting my cash? What are the possible threats? What are my opportunities? What is my team or whoever's underneath me doing? How are they reporting? How good is my information? Do the metrics I'm watching, like the activities I'm watching, are they what I expected? Is that showing up in my P&L at the end of the month? And if I change, does that change that? That's just all really good business stuff. And I think practically those are the things people should be doing right now. And then, like, to your point, once you adopt those, there's no reason to stop doing that. Right? Because the exact same thing is true, that disruptions are good and bad. So the disruption for the next 30 or 60 days of logistically dealing with the flu issues are hurting some things, but the next 30 or 60 or 90 days after that, there's going to be so many opportunities that if we just keep flying, we may miss something where we look up and be like, oh, dude, look, all these guys just did like 50 Airbnb deals over the last 90 days. And I thought they were in trouble, but it really turns out that the hotels are in so much trouble that we weren't watching our things, and Airbnbs blew up. Or I don't know, I made that up, but like, it's missing opportunity, not just avoiding like issues that are going to take you down. It's to look up later and be like, well, we weren't watching the ship and we just drove past all this and we should have seen it.
I think there's just a lot of opportunity when there's blood in the streets and there's change in the marketplace, and it just exposes a massive opportunity. I personally am very excited. I shot a podcast a couple of weeks ago. Now, if those of you that are listening to this, just about what I've done to kind of battle this, what I think every investor should be doing, just good business fundamental sense that you should be doing. And this is going to be an exciting time. This is where some will really set their life up for massive success, and others will, get out of the market. So it's exciting. What do you think is going to happen? Let's push it on further. What's 5 years from now? And how do you think that you have to adopt a different mindset moving forward so that you can succeed in the years to come?
So, man, honestly, for me, I already did that. I don't have to adopt it. I mean, I'm sure I'll learn something out of this. More than anything, it reminded me of the good business practice. But like moving forward, the things that I think are important is my head right now, whether it's current times or whatever, is just staying super aligned. And so I think most people I would argue that 90% of people that build a business don't know what they really want. And two things happen. One is they see what someone else has, so they just try to go build that because that worked for them. Scott, with your health and wellness, I mean, you probably see it. Someone says, oh man, this P90X is really good. This dude got ripped doing it, so I'm going to do that. But you have bad knees and a bad back. Like, that's probably the last thing you should be doing, right? Like, or you're so out of shape you can't even do half the movements. Like that, just because one thing worked for another person doesn't mean it works for you.
That alignment, I think, is huge. That's a great. I mean, you got to be in alignment with your own values for sure.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is I don't think people avoid getting aligned. I just don't think you can align when you don't know what you want.
Yeah.
So we've done this at several of our live events that we do. We have this like 4-question thing where and I won't blow into this too deep, but you guys can write this down if you're listening, that will help you. So a lot of times, if you can cut down to like family, faith, fitness, whatever, like break down into a silo of your life and just say, you know, what do I really want? When you ask that question, people, two things I'll tell people about how to get there. One is, don't base it on your current reality. Like somebody may say, oh, I can't do this because I'm here. And that just seems too crazy for me. Or I don't know this, or I don't have this money, or I don't have that much time. Like, suspend reality. Like when we go watch a superhero movie, we don't sit there and be like, well, this is dumb because people can't fly.
Right.
Like we watch the movie and we're like, this is awesome. But if we were talking to someone on the street and they're like, oh, it'd be really cool if you flew over that building, or you'd be like, well, that's dumb because people don't fly. Like that's a waste of your time. You got to kind of suspend reality a little bit and be like, all right, if my wife didn't think of this of our situation, or if my finances weren't in this order, or if my day job didn't take this so much of my time, like forget all that. It may be a long uphill battle to get to where you want to go, but what would you really do? Right. And so that's one thing. Second thing is, if you knew in a week from now you were going to die, like the doctor said, hey, Scott, bad news, man. Next Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, you're done. The Widowmaker, the heart attack's coming, right? What would you really do? And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you know, whatever. I would do this, I would do that. But you really have to sit down and think about that. And then here's the next level of it is like, okay, what would I really do in the next week if that's all I had? Versus what would I do if I had a year? Versus what would I do if I had 10 years? And whenever we do those in the events we do too. And what's funny is the week is always like, man, I'm flying everyone into my house. Everyone's coming here. I'm gonna tell everybody I love them. I'm gonna spend time with them. I'm gonna shoot videos to teach my kid how to treat women. I'm going to write birthday cards to my kids for the next 18 years. Like it's sad, teary-eyed, whatever. But the core of that is who you really are. Faced with like, what would I really do if I had a lack of time? Even at 1 year, you're probably going to say things like, I'm going to pull my kids out of school, and instead of being in school, they're going to be in an RV, and we're going to drive the country, and
whatever it might be, right?
Whatever it is, that's who you are.
Yep.
So at 10 years, people start saying, I want to build a legacy. That's when work comes into play. No one says, if I got 1 week left, I really want to finish that rehab. I got to get those cabinets picked out, man. Nobody says that.
Nobody says that ever.
So the point of this is, if you guys can think about what do I really want? So if I'm limited in time or resources, what would I really do? And if I could suspend reality of like what my current circumstances are, that's who I am. Okay. Well, the second question of the 4 is, what am I doing to get that? Most of the time it's nothing. I'm literally doing nothing. I'm just thinking about it and stressing myself out. The third question is, how's that working for me? And the fourth question is, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do now? If you can use that process like that, I don't care what times you're in, back to your question, the mindset shift in my mind always comes from getting in line with who you are and what you really want right now. And it starts with asking yourself those kinds of questions and going through that process whenever you feel lost, or whenever you feel behind, or whenever you're feeling bad. What do I really want? What am I doing? What do I need? You know, how's it going? What do I need to do? What do I really care about right now? And so that leads you into alignment with, okay, these are the things I should be doing to get what I really want. Now your mindset is whatever you got to do. So instead of searching the mindset out, it's like figuring out who you are, where you need to be headed. And then I'm like, okay, well, if that's what I got to do, man, I got to shift into that gear. Right. That's how I process everything like that.
I use those. Brian, your business partner, told me those 4 questions probably 2 years ago, something when we were somewhere. Anyways, I was going through something.
That's who taught me too.
Yeah. So he asked me those questions, and it made me really think about what I was going through at the time, to come to a conclusion. And I tell you what, it works. It does work. When you really sit back and spend the time to think about that stuff, it does. You really change whatever direction that you're going in. So anyways, Steve, we talked about a lot of stuff, I feel like, on this call. We really did. Went through a lot of different ways, everywhere from the cycle of your business to coronavirus pandemic to the future and how to change your future. It's been really exciting. But for sake of time, you ready for a lightning round?
Let's do it.
All right. So first question is how do you believe how important do you believe mindset to be on the success of your business and of your life?
Well, to keep this lightning-ish, I feel like I just addressed that pretty well. So I'll just summarize it again by saying this. In my mind, perspective is not half the battle. It's like 90% of the battle. Like right now, you could be sitting around thinking like, this sucks. Like I can't go to work. My kids are home. I don't know if this is going to change my income. Those things are all true. But if you choose to focus on those, it will lead you to more of that versus if you're like, okay, I need to reasonably set aside some time to deal with these 4 things I just said. I got to deal with my kids being around. I got to deal with not being able to go to work. I got to deal with whatever, right? What do I really have to do to knock those things out? Well, let me schedule some time to think about that. Otherwise, I'm going to forget all about that. I'm going to focus on what I can do. And so to me, mindset is everything. I mean, it's like I said, it's 90% of the battle because once you shift your mind right, many of your worries go away because you realize that's not important to where I'm at. And then secondly, you pair off a lot of different things that are distracting you and you can get really focused. And then when you're undistracted and focused with the right mindset, like that's when magic can happen, right?
Amen. So, amen to that. Appreciate you sharing that. What's the last book that you read? What did you learn from it?
You and I were talking about this before. I got to say, like I've been more of an audiobook junkie over the years, so I know that's still reading. I've gotten heavier into podcasts, so I'll have to give the caveat of we're working on some products right now, some training products of our own, and my mind has been so wrapped around that I've actually been kind of focused on my stuff. But I have, so because of that, I've been reading some weird stuff. Not weird, just different. You think a real estate entrepreneur wouldn't be reading. So one of them is called Scrum,
okay.
SCRUM.
Okay.
And if anybody's in the tech world, they know what that is. Scrum is a process for how to problem solve.
Okay.
And it's deeply rooted in the tech world. And what I learned was kind of like, I'm not a military guy, but you may know this, Scott. You may have heard this. Like they tell you in the military, when you get dropped in somewhere, the first thing you do is orient, right? Like you orient to where you are, and then you assess information, and then you process. Scrum is very similar to that. What I learned from that book was, we can make the best laid plans at the beginning of the month or beginning of the year and plan quarterly and monthly and all that. But the Scrum idea is that when you think of a sport where there's a fight going on, you need to, in real time, don't be blinded by your plans. Constantly be orienting yourself to what's going on, which you need a lot of data and metrics for that, and drive decisions based on facts instead of based on just what you think was going to be going on, right? So the other book that I haven't finished, I barely started, was called Lifespan. It's by a guy named David A. Sinclair.
Okay.
And he was interviewed on a podcast I love by Ed Milet, and it's talking about the use of metformin, resveratrol, just some things that are to help like reverse. It's kind of anti-aging book. So it's called Lifespan. It's really cool.
I like it. What are you trying to learn? You said you're putting together some products. So I'm guessing you're trying to learn how to do that more efficiently.
I've had a podcast in the works for a long time, and every quarter I keep telling myself, this is the quarter I'm going to launch the podcast, start the info business, push the training products out. And I keep backburnering them because as a visionary, I'm constantly fighting about staying focused, right?
Yep.
And as you alluded to my business partner, Brian, he's the other half. He's my better half that's like, bro, no, come back over here. Let's finish this first. So I am in that mode heavy now. It's a big benefit of the coronavirus stuff actually is I've been Zooming and webinaring and building a new Facebook group. I'm super excited about that. I'll mention that in a minute, but I'm trying to figure out how to take this last, I've been in business since I was around those startups after college in 1998. 97, 98. So 22 years. And I have a big passion for creating impact. My purpose in life is to create impact, specifically through affecting lasting, significant change in people. I'm trying to figure out how to, and this is really real for people to hear that are entrepreneurial. I'm figuring out how to provide maximum value that really creates change and monetize it at the same time without being a cheese dick, sell from the stage, info marketing guy with pushing my books and my boot camps.
Yep.
But I'm also, nobody cares when you give them something for free. They don't care. So there's this exchange of value for I'm really trying to figure that out right now to do that right. And it's fun, but it's not easy.
It's challenging. Well, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the next question, which is, what is your superpower? But I think that is what you just said, right? You want to elicit change for people. You want to provide value for people, right? Would you say that's what your superpower is?
Yeah, it's creativity. It's the pivot point of the value I want to provide is the impact. My superpower, I think, is I can't explain it very well, but it's some version of applying creativity and empathy to the marketplace. Rarely when I talk to someone, I don't really know what they're thinking. I can almost tell, like, I could finish somebody's sentence like 9 times out of 10 when I'm talking to them, because I'm just gauging what's going on and who they are, what they've said, what I'm thinking, what we're saying. It's kind of a curse sometimes because my brain's running like 100 miles an hour. But yeah, it's the ability to kind of like understand what's going on in the world, be empathetic to it, and figure out how to put value back in. So yeah, it's all around creativity. And yeah, all of our strengths are our biggest weaknesses too. Like, 100%. It's a massive distraction to be constantly processing everything like that. So
you're a very aware person is what it sounds like, but what,
say that, dude.
What's that?
My kids would not agree with that.
Well, of course.
They'd be like, you're not listening to me. Yeah.
How can the listeners reach you if they want to find out more about anything to do with Indy? We didn't really go in that deep today, but you are in Indy, your wholesale house is in Indy. Indy's a great place to buy rental properties, things like that. If they want to get in touch with you for any reason at all, where can they find you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is Facebook. Okay. Just look me up at Steve from Indy. My Facebook is how you can find me. It's Steve Richards. I'm sure you can put a link in the notes or whatever. But what I'm stoked about is I've got a couple groups on Facebook. So if you're a budding entrepreneur, like you're hustling and you want to turn it into a business, we just I know you're in that group. We just started a group called From Hustle to CEO. So if you find that group, it's definitely not for beginners. It's not for people that don't have businesses. It's for people that are out hustling and they want to, formalize what they're doing and turn it into a business and own a business instead of a job.
Yep. So
that's From Hustler to CEO. And then just Facebook is a great way. Send me a friend request or send me a message, even better. And then, we sell flips and rentals to landlords and, flippers in Indianapolis. We only focus in that market. And I love talking shop and I love talking business. So yeah, Facebook's a great way.
Good things, man. Well, like I said, we have shared a ton on this podcast. Hopefully all the listeners, if you're still with us, you've really got a lot out of it. I encourage you to reach out to Steve. He's certainly a personable guy to talk to, always trying to add value. And of course, if you liked it, if you got value from this, make sure to like it and share it with all your friends so they can get that same value out of it. But Steve, thanks again, man. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, dude. On the way out, I want to say one thing.
Let's do it.
I appreciate what you're doing on the podcast. And I would encourage people to really take to heart what you just said about liking and sharing this, because one of the things I'm finding out as I'm working towards this same kind of thing you're doing with this is all this stuff that provides value is like really entertaining until you act on it. And then the more people you bring into it, the more important it becomes, the more alive it becomes, and the more of it you can do. So I would really encourage people to share, help grow the community. I appreciate what you're doing because I'm trying to work towards what you're doing. And hearing that I've got 6 or 7 podcasts recorded, but none of them launched, and thinking you're over 100, I'm like, dude, that's impressive. That's really cool that you've done that. So I appreciate what you're doing, man. I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate that. The one piece of advice I would tell you to do is just launch it. Just start, because I can tell you that I can't really, when I passed over number 100, it was kind of unbelievable that it's been 100 already. And I can tell you it's one bite-sized piece at a time, and it's evolved. It's got better. Some podcasts aren't that good. Others are better, just,
yeah.
So get after it. Anyways, thanks a lot, man. We'll talk to you real soon.
Yep. See you.